Welcome back to Closing Time with Nick El-Tawil. I am still Nick El-Tawil, and I'm here with my guest today, Greg Roeberg. Greg, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing great. And
Good.
Greg, you are running for Attorney General in the state of Arizona, is that right?
It is. We announced last month.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a whirlwind. It's been a lot of exciting things going on, a lot of interviews and speeches and meeting people and learning about the state and applying, my unique background to become the Attorney General and solve a lot of the problems we're facing here in this state.
I tried to get this guy on this podcast when he first announced. He's like, no, I have to do real TV shows and stuff. Which, by the way, good call. Those probably got more reach than this, but...
They did. No. There's not real and fake. There's just different contexts, right?
Yeah.
And so with the launch, I had to kind of go more into politically leaning and everything. But no, this is great. Now, because, my background is as a business attorney and I've done a lot of real estate work and, I understand your field of real estate, how important it is to our state here in Arizona. And so, Nick's podcast here, Closing Time, this was on our list, top of the list here. We were talking about doing this right away. So really excited to have you here. Yeah.
So where are you from, Greg? Are you from AZ?
I'm not. So I'm originally from Wilmington, Delaware. You probably haven't met too many people from Delaware.
No, but all the businesses are incorporated there.
That's true. It's me and about 6,000 LLCs formed there, right? But no, so I grew up there, and then when I was a teenager, it's about half hour outside of Philadelphia. So I tell people suburb of Philadelphia. And then when I was a teenager, I went down to Washington, D.C., and I went to college and law school at Georgetown in Washington, D.C.
So you're bred for politics.
Sort of. I was really interested in history and government.
Same.
And so that came into play. I wasn't, it's funny. Now I'm running for Attorney General. I never saw myself as running for an office. I sort of got involved with the Trump folks when Trump came into office. And when we first started running in 2016, I joined the team and I worked on the inauguration for Trump in D.C. And sort of Donald Trump coming into play is what brought me from sort of a political observer, voting every 4 years to getting more involved. And then as time went on, I became an election attorney and for the team. And in this most recent election, 2024, I was the Arizona election attorney for the Trump campaign. Learned a lot about elections, a lot about what I would say is the dysfunction in our state, in the political realm, even within parties. It's not just Democrats against Republicans, it's Democrats against Democrats, Republicans against Republicans. There's a lot of messiness here, which is I find disturbing because the general person in Arizona, I find it's why I moved here. Be such a nice person and people with good values. And so in light of all that, I decided I had to stop sitting on the sidelines and we jumped in and we're running and we're in it to win it.
It's not a heavy political state by any means.
No.
When I lived in New York, it was like, you have to be registered as a Democrat. Even people who, maybe lean the other way, they still go Democrat because you have to be a Democrat.
Right.
Here, I think people are much more just themselves. And we have a good mix of people from all over. I will say, I don't think I've shown you this.
Yeah, what we got?
So, to be clear, I do not do political advertising for my business. I'm very neutral. Back in the day when Trump was running for the first time, when you were working on his campaign, I had, it was before he won, and I just thought it was funny. I thought he was getting all this attention, so I did this real estate campaign. Again, New York days, Donald Trump had all the Trump buildings in New York. Sure. So I sent this as a postcard to every single
Make real estate great again.
Trump building.
You can see that. That's great. Make real estate great again. I love it.
So that made some waves. And then it was doing well as a postcard, so I put it on social media, and it went kind of viral.
Yeah,
700,000 likes.
700,000 likes.
Back in
That's
2016.
Awesome. Yeah, in 2016, it's amazing. In finishing up, so when I was in law school, I visited a friend who was living here in Chandler at the time, and came here, and it was, I think a lot of people from Arizona can tell you this story. It was March, and the grass was green and gorgeous, and there were baseball spring training games going on. And, now I've got a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I don't golf anymore. But in those days, I golfed multiple times a week, and I was just sold on and kind of...
Teach them to golf.
Yeah, I'll teach them to golf once they get a little older, and then I can golf. But I was just sold. I was sort of, and in your field, real estate was just exploding, still is to an extent, not the way it was 20 years ago. This was in 2005, I came here. And sort of moved out here, hung my shingle, and I've been a business attorney ever since. And then about 10 years ago is when I started getting involved in politics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. You know, I took Arizona for granted growing up here, but everyone who comes from somewhere else has that story. Like, wow,
Yes.
we came here, it's so nice, easy living, it's sunny all the time. I'm just going to stay. And then I grew up here and I'm like, well, it must be like this everywhere else.
And it is
no,
not.
it's not.
It is not
It's
like this.
not.
No, it's, I think one thing, you know, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, we can all agree on. We're lucky to live here in Arizona. So
For sure.
that's a, you know, that's another thing too, I'll say. I feel like in Arizona, you know, a lot of times our elected officials, there's so much dysfunction there. But in the general population, I have friends that are Democrats, I have friends that are Republicans. I'm sure you have friends that are Democrats, Republicans, and you know, I feel like within the general public of Arizona, we don't have sort of the vitriol that we do around the country.
No.
And you know, I love that about this. But part of the reason I'm running again is our current Attorney General has made the office very politicized. She's suing people basically on their political party. She's trying to put some people in jail basically because they're Republicans. And my goal is to, when I become Attorney General, is to make the office, you know, just what they call black letter law, straight down the middle, prosecute the criminals, and it shouldn't really make a difference whether someone's Republican or Democrat. I want to depoliticize the Attorney General's office. So that's my major goal here in running.
So you're an OG Republican.
I am.
Small government.
Yes.
Less power. Yes.
Yeah. Small government. I think, you know, I think there's a time and a place for regulation and taxes, but I think generally speaking, you know, if you can get, especially in a place like Arizona with so much energy and vibrance, if you can get out of the way of businesses and developers and innovators and entrepreneurs, I think that's the best way to let the state thrive.
Absolutely. And on that note, since we're talking real estate and all the regulations, zoning and all that stuff, like all the zoning and the parking requirements that's required in real estate, that makes it really hard for people to build. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and this is actually one of the reasons I want to talk to you about. So I think we have a problem in that it's hard to add supply of housing, right? And I think, you know, people all over, whether they're talking about, you know, availability, costs, the market just being frozen, right? We need more availability, and a major problem is the zoning and permitting process. And so a lot of developers, I saw one study that a typical home, it's $90,000 of zoning and permitting to start a house, right? And so especially if you're on the lower end, if you want to have a mortgage that's $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, if $90,000 of the upfront cost from the developer goes into zoning and permitting, that's going to be pretty tough to hit, right?
Yep.
And we have so many projects that get stalled on the regulatory level. And so one thing that Maricopa County is already starting to lean into this, but we have a patchwork of regulations across different jurisdictions, different municipalities, different counties, right? So if a developer comes in, you know, a Shea Homes or a Toll Brothers or a Pulte Homes or someone like that, and a lot of times for economies of scale, they'll want to put up 6 or 7 projects, you know, especially we're seeing people trying to do, you know, more master plan communities, things like that. We have a lot of land in Arizona. That's one thing we have a lot of, right? And you know, new build projects are tempted to go up all over the place. So what happens is, because they might have one set of regulations in Ahwatukee, another set of regulations in Goodyear, another set of regulations in Scottsdale, it makes the costs so burdensome to go through that process. And sometimes it's not even the expense of the filing fees and things like that. It's just the time. You know, we submit an application in one municipality and it takes 2 months for them to get back to us on something, or getting someone out there to do site inspections, things like that. And so the Arizona Attorney General, under the Arizona Constitution, is the chief legal officer of the state of Arizona, the chief legal advisor of the entire state. So the Office of the Attorney General, and as I said, certain counties are leaning into this, could work with your local municipalities and work with the different, you know, zoning ordinances, the different inspection requirements, the different permitting requirements, and create a standardized system. And in doing that, now developers can have a more streamlined approach at going through this process, which allows them to build more property, which allows more you know, supply of property, which is really what we need here in this state. Because, you know, regardless of what's going on, people are still moving here, right? Mm-hmm. And people will continue to move here, in my opinion. I think, like I said, I fell in love with this place 20 years ago, and I never plan on leaving. And so that's something I wanted to discuss with you.
Absolutely. It's always a struggle, because if you try and make home values go down, well, all those people who saved and invested and, you know, put all this money in their home over the last 20 years, they lose what they worked so hard for. But if you just build more, that increases the supply, and that means new people can come.
Right.
So I think increasing supply is the only reasonable way to do it, only fair way to do it. And even, again, going back to New York, the Zohran Mamdani guy is about to be the mayor. That guy wants to freeze the rent. He's very one certain way.
That'd be devastating.
But even he wants to build more.
Right.
He says we need to loosen regulations and build more.
Right.
It's the only way to do it.
No, I think you're exactly right. I think, you know, in real estate, right? Location.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you're not gonna see prices drop in, you know, expensive areas, right? And you can't, you know, it's not realistic to expect that, or as you said, even desire that, because so many people, their life savings, especially in our state, a huge portion of life savings are tied up in the equity of their homes, right? But when you go, there's you know, places out on the west side of Maricopa County, you know, Sun City, Goodyear out there where master plan communities are going up. Also in the far East Valley, sort of in the Mesa area, you see Gilbert Mesa area, but now and getting down to Queen Creek, you see master plan communities going up. And so what would happen is, if I'm a young person looking for a starter home, you know, maybe I'm not gonna buy this big fancy house, you know, next door to where my parents live in you know, North Scottsdale, for instance. So, but I can still get a quality home to raise my family. I just have to go 20 minutes out the 202 or 20 minutes out the 303, right? And so that's sort of the goal that I think developers have in place. I do think, again, you know, this is real estate, not political, but we have concerns with the current governor. She's been vetoing projects based upon what she's alleging is water supply. And so, you know, we do have some concerns with water, but not enough where it should be halting development. In fact, the vast majority of our water goes to agriculture. It doesn't go to residential. And I think 70%.
74% goes through agriculture. And
there you go.
Just building more homes, more data centers, more commercial properties automatically reduces water usage because we're getting rid of farms.
There you go.
Yeah. So just becoming more urban.
Right. And a lot of our property, you know, there's like county land up North Phoenix, Maricopa County land that's being released. So a lot of the land's desertscape that's being released for permitting and building that there have been moratoriums on. So it's not necessarily replacing farms. Honestly, we do have enough water to even sustain the farms we have and build more real estate, more homes, and more data centers, like you said. It's just we have to navigate our negotiations of water with California and the other Colorado River states. And so there's an agreement in place that's going to be renewed here between Arizona, California, and the other Colorado River states. There's half a dozen of them or so. And one thing that we'll have to get on top of is California sort of sits at the top, under the current agreement, sits sort of the top of the totem pole. And you would think of California as sort of an environmental state, people that really, you know, they at least preach that they're concerned about the environment, but they waste a lot of water. And by contrast, here in Arizona, you'd think that, you know, we have this reputation of being, you know, the wild, wild west or whatever it is, but we're some of the most conservationist water places in the
By
country,
far.
if not the world.
We have the strictest water regulations ever. No one else has water regulations like us.
Right. And so
this might be a little outdated,
go
but
ahead.
I think it was 2 years ago I was posting about this. The top 5 farms in Arizona use more water than Phoenix and Tucson combined.
Wow. Okay. So that's and then similarly, you're also seeing that, you know, data centers that are coming up, they're using more electricity than entire towns around the country and things like that. So it is a changing environment, a changing economy, right? But there's plenty of resources. And getting back to the Attorney General can go after, you know, as I was mentioning, the state of California for their wasteful water. If they waste less water as it comes down the totem pole to sort of the lower Colorado Basin, Colorado River states, we have access to more water. And it's a problem that is very solvable as long as you have an attorney general in office who's willing to fight and do the hard work and fight for the water that Arizona needs. And so, you know, as we go out into these areas where they're putting in master plan communities, if we can, you know, again, the attorney general could navigate a framework that causes these zoning and permitting prices to drop, which allows more development. At the same time, we can work to increase the water supply, and there shouldn't be a problem, honestly. And so, you know, our leadership right now sort of sticking their head in the sand and just, you know, I'll put a moratorium on building, and then, you know, what do you do as people keep moving here, as you know, young adults move out of their parents' home, as we have new jobs coming in related to all the data centers and the Taiwan Semiconductor. People are moving here, right? And so we need homes for them. I mean, I don't think that's even under question. And so the Attorney General can do a lot to get those things going.
Absolutely. And I've heard this a few times. I don't know exactly how true it is, but it does relate to what you're talking about with the Attorney General using the water regulations to block home building. So for commercial properties, if someone builds a 500-unit apartment building, it's on one lot. There's no water requirements whatsoever. They just bypass that whole thing. But if they build 500 homes for sale, they have to go through the water process. So the regulations, and also maybe the Attorney General, based on what you're saying, the past few years have just incentivized developers to build rentals rather than homes for sale. So Phoenix actually leads the nation in build-to-rent homes right now. So people are actually building houses. They're not selling them. It's just one lot because they skip the water thing and just hold them and rent them out.
Yeah, and I do want to say, I don't want to misstate anything. So the Attorney General doesn't make any laws. The Attorney General enforces the laws that the legislature
So
puts on the books.
She's enforcing, oh, we don't have enough water here. You can't build that.
Right.
But you guys can build a 500-unit apartment building because you don't have to go through that process.
And the governor's doing the same thing. Yeah. And there are, look, I'm running for Attorney General. I value integrity. Yeah. I would never accuse someone of a crime without proof. But there are allegations floating around on various industries, making political donations to the Democrats we have in power now that could be affecting their decision making, right? And so, but we're going to restore integrity to the office. As you said, look, and there is a time and a place for built to rent, right? Like that is a value.
Yeah, it is value. It's expensive to build right now.
It's expensive to build, and if they can front load that, that's a value. But I think if you'd agree with me, this country was built on home ownership.
Right. We can't prevent homes being built for sale. That's just going to make the value of the actual homes that people can buy go way up.
Right.
Because there's only rentals left.
Yeah.
So
I think, like I said, and this is nothing new. This has been going on since suburbia, post World War II suburbia, right? A city gets very dense, and then people start moving to the suburbs, right? And then as that gets even, more higher end and more expensive, people move to like the exurbs, I believe is the term. And so, Arizona, we have plenty of land. We have plenty of resources. We can easily accommodate all the fine folks that want to move here and all the fine businesses that want to start here and people that want to raise their families here. People like me that are coming. I did this 20 years ago, right? So I came in 20 years ago, and now I'm here with a wife and two toddlers, right? And we're raising our families here. And there's plenty of resources to do that. We just need the government to get out of our way. And so that's a big reason why I'm running for Attorney General.
Well, I'm glad you are.
Appreciate it. And Nick and I are friends. We've been friends for a while. So I appreciate you opening up your venue and your podcast to me. It's
absolutely, man.
I feel like all my friends have done it. I'm kind of the last one standing.
Yeah, you might actually be.
Yeah.
Actually, lately I've just been going through this Empire place and just asking people. Because before I would just ask people as I meet them out and about, and now that I kind of have this as my home base, it's just like, hey, you want to do a podcast? Yeah, why not?
Yeah, no, it's a great resource.
Save the best for last, because
you
had a big reason to do it.
I did. I've got, I'm doing a lot of media. It's been a lot of fun reaching out to folks, and we're getting in a little later, right? So I tell people that I need help with getting petitions signed. I need roughly 7,500 signatures to get on the ballot. Obviously, I need to raise money. I need to knock on doors. I need to hang signs. There's a lot of work that gets into this, but I think with my background, and I really didn't get into it, but my background, I'm uniquely positioned to come in and impact the office right away, and so I'm excited to do it.
Can you tell us why about your background?
Sure. So
as I know, but
right,
for the people.
For the people. So like I said, about 10 years ago, I kind of transitioned from, I've always sort of been a Republican, I've always been conservative, but I transitioned to being more active in the party. And like I said, I got engaged and worked with the Trump campaign and worked on the 2016 inauguration. I went up Trump Tower in 2016 when they had all the cameras at the elevators and everything. It was really exciting. And then
you probably went right past me.
I probably did, right?
Saw my postcards.
There we go. Make real estate great again. And then I was in Washington, D.C. for a couple of months working for the inauguration. I came back here, and something we haven't gotten into, I started losing weight in, this would be 2018 or so, and then I started losing a lot of weight, and I had a really hard time getting diagnosed. It took me 6 to 8 months to figure out what was going on with me, but I ended up getting diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma cancer, and which sounds really bad, and sometimes it can be really bad. I was very, very lucky. I just, this past summer, had my 5 years post-treatment checkup, and now my incidence of recurrence or my likelihood of getting cancer back is the same as the general population. So my type of lymphoma was treatable, and we got to it, and I went to treatment up at the Mayo Clinic, and I was definitely, very fortunate. And so that experience it changed me, as it would change anyone going through that. And I remember I was sitting there, and they send you to the infusion center to get your chemotherapy. I was going through chemotherapy for about 6 months. Once every 2 weeks for 6 months, they'd, pump me full of chemo. And I went in, and I was an attorney in my 30s, and I was surrounded by people twice my age who, maybe didn't have such a paperwork background. And I had such a hard time navigating the billing and the doctors. My insurance initially wasn't even covering anything. I've been a self-employed attorney for 20 years, so or close to 20 years.
We have no insurance.
I was on Obamacare, and it was messy. I was very fortunate. So I was already engaged, and my now wife and I had planned a destination wedding. And when you do a destination wedding, you have to legally get married at an Arizona courthouse, for it to be legal in Arizona. You can't just fly off to the foreign country and no one there is licensed to marry you. So we had to do the paperwork anyway. So, we went and did the paperwork right around the time that I was going through all this, and I got on her. My wife's also a lawyer. She's right now doing sort of the stay-at-home mom thing with our 2 young children, but she's an attorney. So I got on the health insurance of her law firm, and then was able to get into the Mayo Clinic, and they patched me up. And there was a time period where I was really kind of they weren't quite sure what I had, and I was very lucky, and I am very lucky, and life's a blessing. I don't take it for granted. But there was a time where it was looking like I might not be able to, I was gonna have to make arrangements, as one of the doctors put it. So going through that process and going through that nightmare and having to change insurance companies and dealing with bills, and some medical facilities were charging me for things that I didn't even do, and we're now seeing there's a lot of medical and Medicare fraud, right? Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say anything I went through raised the level of fraud. It just raised to the level of an assembly line algorithmic system that didn't really apply to me the way it was, and I had to fight to get money back. And so I looked around, and like I said, there were people twice my age who were not attorneys, right? And I thought to myself in that moment, when I get through this, or if I get through this, but when I get through this, I want to become more active and more engaging and helping people. And I feel that now my time has come, and I feel that Attorney General is the number one way I can help this state and help the people of this state. So that's sort of my motivation.
We're all glad you made it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do. It was like I said, it was scary until I got diagnosed. Once I got diagnosed and they figured out exactly what I had, my doctors were telling me I was going to be fine, and so that was a relief. There's a million types of cancer, but when you have a type of cancer, the doctors say, "Okay, we're going to do this. You'll be fine." That was phew, right?
Did you do chemo?
I did. So it was for 6 months. Every 2 weeks, I went to Mayo Clinic. They call it the infusion center, and they, put an IV and gave me 4 types of chemotherapy, 4 types of chemicals, 4 types of medication, and so anyway, so that was sort of my little detour during what we'll call Trump 1.0. And by 2020, the re-elect, I had already, I'd gotten back into things, and I was back to normal. I was working, and my hair grew back and all that, right? And grew back a little different. It always grows a little different after chemotherapy. But so then I got involved with the Trump 2020 campaign, and initially I was doing sort of fundraising and event planning, right? And helping out with organizing events and things like that. And someone called, Greg, are you a lawyer in Arizona? And I said, yeah, and I've been one for, at that point, 15 years or whatever it was. And they were like, we're having a lot of problems in Arizona this year. Can you kind of go out and keep an eye on things for us? And so I did, and I manned sort of a hotline where people were calling in complaints about the election. And that's a story for a whole other podcast, the calls that were coming in. But then coming out of 2020, I helped out filing for the Arizona audit. A lot of lawyers were unwilling to do this. Was after January 6th, so a lot of lawyers were unwilling to get involved, frankly. And then in 22, I worked on some campaigns and some organizations, and I observed some the vote counting down at what they call MCTEC in Maricopa County. And then finally, this past year in 24, there were some issues with the lawyers, and I got the call from the Trump campaign, can you be the attorney? And I went on, and I kind of had the battle scars from 2020, where these calls I was getting in 2020. I don't know, because I was just logging them into the system, but I heard they weren't really being followed up upon until after the election, which at that point it's too late. So in 24, I was just manning the help desk, making phone calls. If there was an issue in, some precinct in Tucson, I would call down there. This is an attorney of the Republican Party, attorney of the Trump campaign. We heard that, a couple voters didn't get the second page of their ballot. Just ensuring that people knew, both our voters for confidence, that someone was on it, and people working for the elections understood that there's a process in place and a protection in place, and so that was sort of the role. So then finishing up, just now, I learned a lot about the election process, and I know people have mixed feelings on our elections, but I do think the most important thing we can do is reinstate confidence in our elections and make sure that people understand, look, it's Arizona. You're going to have Democrats that win, you're going to have Republicans that win. But people can understand, one, we don't have to wait 3 weeks to get the election results, right, which is frustrating for everyone. And two, people aren't questioning the results because people have confidence in them. So that's sort of my background as an election attorney, and that's what I can bring in. And there's some low-hanging fruit, easy fixes we can do to, right now the system's sort of lax and lazy. We can make it firm but fair, and everyone across all stripes can be confident in the results. And like I said, sometimes Democrats will win, sometimes Republicans will win, but we can have a system that everyone trusts.
I love it.
There you go.
I love it. And you were a real estate attorney too, right?
I was. So sort of as general business attorney, I'd have people come in that were doing, real estate developers. I've worked with realtors. I've worked with, some people that
hate them,
flip houses, right? Your people, right? And that's something else that I feel uniquely qualified for, especially with other candidates. I've touched on, as a general business attorney, on virtually every industry in Arizona, and I think that I've run a law firm, essentially the Attorney General. Attorney General is not going to court. The Attorney General is running an office that sends lawyers to court, right? And so I have executive experience in running businesses and advising people to run businesses.
So for the uninitiated out there, Attorney General, you are basically the one who decides who you pursue for crimes.
Yes,
is that right?
Correct. So the Attorney General of Arizona is a little different than other states. A lot of states, you have a governor who appoints an Attorney General, similar to how the president appoints an Attorney General at the federal level, okay? But the Attorney General handles prosecutions at the state level. Mm-hmm. So, if you're out, and you see a bar fight and someone gets arrested by Scottsdale police, that wouldn't be the Attorney General, that'd be the city attorney for Scottsdale or the municipal attorney, right? Mm-hmm. If someone's arrested by Maricopa County Police, that's the county attorney. But if someone's arrested at the state level by state police, then those prosecutions go through the Attorney General's office, and we have a whole division of lawyers that are devoted to that. And again, take the politics out of it. Our current Attorney General, she goes after people for political purposes, but just remove that out. There's no need for that. And then at the same time, the Attorney General represents the state of Arizona against other states, sort of like we were talking about with going after California.
Going after California. Okay, right. That's a very relevant point. Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense.
And then at the same time, the Attorney General acts as the chief legal officer of the state. Mm-hmm. So that's how we could work with and advise municipalities, counties, and other agencies to have sort of a standardized framework for zoning and permitting in the real estate world. And so that's the Attorney General wears a lot of hats in Arizona. Basically, if state laws aren't being followed, and sometimes that state law could be, in the case of our Attorney General, currently, there was a power plant in Kingman that was looking to be expanded. And usually that falls under the Corporate Commission, which it does, and the Corporate Commission approved that power plant to be expanded. Our rates have been going up, we need power plants, right? And the Attorney General, for, I believe, environmental reasons, she stepped in and started filing lawsuits to pause and freeze the expansion of that power plant. Then at the same time, she went and goes after SRP and APS for, rates going too high when she's the one kind of causing these rates, right? So that's, that's sort of the many hats the Attorney General wears. Mm-hmm. It'd basically be, like I said, prosecuting crime is the top priority, ensuring the laws of the states are being followed, which includes election laws, making sure the election laws in the state are being followed, and advising agencies and being the chief legal officer of the state.
And stealing water from California.
Not stealing, forcing California to act appropriately in their water conservation so that we don't get stuck with the bill.
Right, because we're at the bottom of the list.
Pretty much, yeah. And they're renegotiating the deal, so hopefully, that'll be done by the legislature, not the Attorney General. Hopefully, they can renegotiate a deal that's more favorable to us. But if they don't, whatever deal we get, I'm going to be on and on and on it to make sure that all of our rights are being preserved and we're getting all the water we're entitled to.
I love it.
There you go.
I fucking love it.
Okay,
Greg, do you have anything else?
I got a vote. I got one guy voting for me, right? We'll see.
I'm not a political guy.
Okay,
I'm not going to say I'm voting for
There we go.
I like the guy, though.
Okay. Personally. I got a friend out of it. So to get a hold of me, all my socials are Greg4AZ at Greg, GREGFORAZ. That's on X, Facebook, Instagram. And then my website, same thing, greg4az.com, GREGFORAZ.com. If you go on there, sign the petition, get me on the ballot, we'll take donations, sign the forms to volunteer, or just sign the form to join my newsletter, and we'll keep you updated on all the events coming in.
And when do people vote for you once you make that ballot?
So the primary would be in August, but there's early voting for about a month, call it July into the first week of August. And then the general election, it's a quick turnaround. A few months later is first week of November, but again, there'll be early voting in October.
Summer 2026, everybody. Greg for AZ.
There we go.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks so much.